As often as we possibly can, we like to gather and talk about the science that's underway aboard the International Space Station. For over a year now, we have been in the utilization phase, and there's a lot of science going on. And we figured what better time than on the eve of the launch of the SpaceX Falcon 9 and Dragon on its way to the International Space Station to restore America's capability to take cargo up and bring it back down from American soil. This is be a great time to get together and talk to you about science. So we've gathered a panel, and I'd like to introduce them right now. To my left is Julie Robinson, the International Space Station Program Scientist for NASA. Next to Julie, Tim Yateman, Interim Chief Scientist for the Center for the Advancement of Science in Space, or CASIS. Next to Tim, Sheila Nielsen-Price, cell biologist from Montana State University. And next to Sheila is Scott Smith, a NASA nutritionist from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. Thank you all very much for being here. We'll open up with comments, and then we'll be happy to take questions from the gathered press. Go ahead, Julie.
Well, thanks a lot. It's great to be here today on what is really a momentous milestone for research on the International Space Station as we head towards our first commercial cargo launch. The SpaceX Dragon is a really important vehicle for us because it supports the laboratory use of ISS both in bringing cargo up to the space station and in bringing research samples home. And it has a great return capability. It essentially replaces that capacity that we lost when the shuttle retired, so that now we'll be able to bring home a wide variety of biological samples, physical sciences samples, and we'll be able to bring home research equipment that we need to refurbish and then relaunch again for the next set of experiments. So we're really excited to be here and to share with you some of the science both that's going up and down on the flight, as well as give you some background about the research going on the space station today. At any one time, and now is no exception, we have over 200 experiments active on the ISS, and about 100 of those right now are US-based experiments, and the others are from our international partners, Russia, the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, and the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. This SpaceX launch for the entire partnership will be taking up about 1,000 pounds of research cargo, equipment samples, in addition to the things that it launches for the crew, as well as for the vehicle maintenance and operations. And it will be returning about the same. And so this is a pretty exciting thing for us. The other excitement that we have is in seeing the development and the growth of our national laboratory users. And so it's exciting to have scientists from CASIS representing CASIS today to talk about some of the activities going on with CASIS on the national laboratory side. We have a combination of both NASA and national laboratory users. And to give you a sense of what that looks like, if I could have my first slide. Here in this graph, you see the different disciplines that are on the International Space Station in this research portfolio I've been talking about: biology and biotechnology, earth and space science, education and cultural activities, human research, physical sciences, and technology development and demonstration. And in this little pie chart, I show you those 100 U.S. investigations, but they're broken out in two ways. The part of the pie on the right that's all crunched together shows you the NASA-sponsored investigations, where NASA's the primary funder. The blown up part of the chart that's on the right side of the pie are those that are managed under ISS as a national laboratory. As you probably recall, back in 2005, Congress designated ISS as a national laboratory, and that's for users from other government agencies, the private sector, or nonprofit organizations. This increment, we have about 40% of the U.S. research that is on that national laboratory side, primarily because there are a large number of student experiments going up on this particular launch. The student education program has a wide variety of experiments going up, and you may have seen a press release about that just yesterday. The research, as I showed you then on that graph, there's a real diversity of research, and I wanted to give you just a sense of the kinds of things going on the space station today. So if I could have my next chart, I'll give you one example from each of these disciplines. In the physical sciences, we have a wide variety of experiments. Just one of these is a combustion experiment where we're burning solid materials. Now, in space, you don't have convection, meaning warm air does not rise, and that really changes the way that things burn. Scientists are leveraging that both to understand understand combustion better to make more efficient engines, but also to understand combustion better in case there is a fire on the spacecraft. And this study is particularly focused on solids that are in spacecraft that might catch fire if you had a big accident, and how you would suppress that burning by understanding that burning better. And you can see some pictures. This experiment has been ongoing for a while. You can see some pictures of things burning inside the microgravity sciences glove box. I think it's pretty cool that there are things burning like that on the ISS at different points in time. And what we're bringing up on this flight are igniters, the little thing that we use to help set these samples on fire. If I could have the next chart, switching gears to the Earth and space sciences, this instrument is on ISS and will be becoming more and more active as we continue to implement it. It's an instrument called ISERV, which stands for the Environment Research and Visualization System. It's basically a telescope with a high-resolution camera. It can take images of the Earth with 3-meter spatial resolution, so very high-quality, high spatial resolution images. It is linked to a project that's supported by USAID, the Agency for International Development, and to a project called SERVIR, which helps to distribute data of major environmental events all around the world. So things like droughts and floods and other kinds of dynamic events that can really have humanitarian impacts. So this telescope will basically be able to point out our optical quality window and collect data and provide it to this SERVIR network. It's a pathfinder instrument for us to help us see how we can get this kind of high resolution data. It'll be the highest resolution data we've collected from ISS so far. But its real importance is for supporting the environmental decision making around the world, and as a pathfinder for the major external instruments that we're in the process of building right now. Another area of research that we do on the International Space Station is technology development and demonstration. And by doing these kinds of demonstration activities, we can make sure that the next space exploration that we do is safer and more cost-effective. One example of a piece of hardware on ISS today that's important is the MISSY-8 experiment. And if I could have the next slide to show a picture of that. MISSY-8, here you can see an astronaut on EVA right next to the MISSY-8 hardware. This is a system for testing materials on ISS, and some of the commercial providers of satellites have found that if they test a new material in this way, they really learn things about those materials. The space environment is quite harsh. It gets hot and cold. There's ultraviolet light. There's atomic oxygen in low Earth orbit that can really chew things up. And so by testing these materials, satellite providers can have better performance and can take new advanced materials that are developed and be sure they're going to work before they put them in a spacecraft. And that really saves development time. Then shifting gears yet again to another discipline, we have human research that's really focused on understanding the effects of space on the human body so that astronauts can explore beyond Earth orbit. And in the next picture, you'll see an example, a photograph of Mike Fossum and Ron Guerin a few months ago putting samples into our Melfi freezer. That's a -80-degree laboratory freezer that we have on the space station. They're putting in samples of blood and urine that they had collected to monitor their physiological status. And one experiment that they've been sampling for is an experiment called Vascular, which is short for cardiovascular health consequences of long-duration spaceflight. It's a Canadian Space Agency investigation, and it's focused on, during spaceflight, whether the blood vessels change, if they look more like blood vessels of older people, and if there are inflammation of the artery walls, as well as other changes in the vessel properties. And that links to the loss of cardiovascular fitness that can happen to astronauts because it's so easy to float around in space rather than really having to fight gravity every day like we do here on Earth. So this is just one example of a number of human research investigations that are active on ISS today. Of course, if the human body is so affected by being in space, it's not surprising that cells, animals, small plants, and so forth are also affected. And so I wanted to give you one example of an experiment in biology and biotechnology. The plant signaling investigation, it will have samples coming home on this flight. And if I could have the next picture, you can see a picture of Sunny Williams actually carrying out operations on this investigation. On the next chart, please. So this is a study that's looking at the effect of microgravity on the growth of plants, and especially the way the plant uses plant hormones to signal and coordinate the growth of the different kinds of cells that it has. This is important both for food and crop production on Earth, as well as possibly understanding better how to produce food plants in space. And if I could have the next picture, please. Next picture. This final picture shows you an example of an educational activity. This is the Tech EdSat. It was deployed from ISS on Thursday. It's an example of an engineering education activity. It was built by students at San Jose State University. It has a ham radio transmitter in it to communicate with it, and it's about a 4-inch cube. The entire experiment was built for about $30,000 by using good commercial components. And one of the things that we're seeing in many of our education projects is we've brought the cost of doing research down enough on ISS that it's really accessible for students to do small tests and different things. If you noticed on that on the pie chart I showed, there was a really large wedge of education projects on the National Lab side, and that's driven by about 23 to 26 investigations that are student designed. There have been some contests under the Student Spaceflight Experiments program, and the winners of those contests, those lucky schools, are getting to fly their experiments. Each experiment is in what we call a mixed stick. It's basically a little stick. It's sort of like the stick that you use, the glow sticks that kids use at night or at concerts or things like that, and you break them to mix the fluids together. The astronauts will take them out, break them to activate the experiment, and then they'll be returned home. About 7,000 students have applied, developed experiment proposals for the SSEP program, and so that has a really amazing impact. Scientists or educators have studied middle school and high school students and find if they get to do real science where they're generating their own hypotheses, that's what really engages them in STEM education, in science, technology, engineering, and math. So we're really excited for those students, and in particular we had some experiments that were not successfully activated on a previous flight, and they're all getting to refly this time. And one of the great things about SpaceX cargo and having these frequent launches is that when something does go wrong, which it does in the laboratory, we're able to recover it very quickly. So that kind of gives you a sense overall of the diversity of activities, the number of activities on the space station. The last year of full utilization from the time that the shuttle retired until today has been just extraordinary. We've had record numbers of crew hours going to research. We've had record numbers of investigators active on ISS. And so with that as context, let me hand off to Dr. Tim Yateman, and he can give you some updates on CASES.
Sure, thank you, Julie. Well, as you may know, CASES stands for the Center for Administration of Science and Space, and basically our organization is responsible for partnering with NASA to really identify the best science to go up to the station, to the National Lab. And we've been spending our first year not only developing the organization, but starting to actively look for both solicited and unsolicited projects to go up in space. During, in fact, projects that will unfold during Increment 33 and 34 will be 3. One is called Spheres, which is a robotics programming competition where satellites inside the International Space Station will be programmed. It's a software competition for students to test out their capabilities. There's another program called Windows on Earth, which is basically, again, a software program to basically take advantage of Google Earth Engine and provide better visualization capabilities. And a third is called ISEC, the International Space Station Agricultural Camera, which captures some of these fantastic geographical areas of interest with red and near-infrared band passes and medium and high spatial resolution. So that's what's going on now, but in the future, what we're trying to do is identify the best science to go to the station. And so what we've done initially is we assembled what I would call a blue ribbon panel of scientists and reviewed basically what's been done to date to try to identify key areas of interest. We've identified really 3 main pathways, one in the life sciences, material sciences, and then Earth observation. And I can tell you a lot more about the life sciences where we made some significant progress. We've actually identified within life sciences about 4 areas of interest. The first is protein crystallography. And you might put up a video behind me. If you're not familiar with this, protein crystallography is the beginning of